right.
Okay, so we're talking with Cinnamon Winkler. And why don't you give me your official title or titles here at Sound, and then we'll just go right into the burning questions here.
Okay, so I am a SUDPT, so a substance use disorder professional trainee, or we could just say SUD clinician because that's a lot easier.
Right.
And I am also with the MAT program, so a MAT clinician, MAT clinician is what it says on my business card.
Okay. And why don't you go in a little bit more detail about the two programs you just mentioned, kind of what they're about and what the goal is in terms of helping the clients that you see.
So the MAT program, I'll start out with that, is a low barrier medication assisted treatment program for clients. The idea is that whether somebody wants to get an assessment done, whether they want to get on Suboxone, there's often a lot of barriers, right? Like for somebody to get a regular SED assessment, they would need to generally call the admissions line or be set up with a clinician, but there's like a whole process that happens first. And if there's any legal involvement, they need specific documents. And sometimes those documents can be very difficult to get. And I know there's a lot of our facilities require that they have those documents in hand before we do the assessment. So part of the low barrier work I was doing was, before even really opening up a chart for them or getting them into the system, I would meet with them a number of times just to kind of help them at least a couple of times, right? Whether they needed their insurance turned back on, it would help them, get their insurance activated again, or if their insurance was in a different county, help them switch it over. Get a release of information for their CCO and help them get their legal documents. So just helping them put all those pieces together beforehand, right? So they don't have the barrier of, well, I really need to get this intake done, but I don't have a home. Maybe I have a phone, and if I do, it doesn't work all the time. I don't necessarily have a place to charge it, or internet access, in a way to even get a hold of who this attorney could be if I know who my attorney is, right? So all the little details, they add up, and especially when you don't have the access to even communicate the way that most of us who are housed and do have things, those things might be easy for us, but it's not for them. So there's that, and kind of helping people connect to like the Suboxone providers, low barrier Suboxone providers like Fern and John Olson. And when I was at the University District doing a lot of outreach, so, kind of going and with a couple of us would go to camps, just try and engage clients while they were in
like homeless camps is what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, a couple times.
Okay.
Mostly it was just in the alleyway behind the University District. So we also worked with Roots Young Adult Program, Roots Young Adult Shelter, and People's Harm Reduction Alliance. So we were kind of working closely with them to get referrals as well. Since we have moved, that hasn't been a thing so much, just because it hasn't really been as possible.
Mm-hmm. What is for someone who's thinking about doing what you do, what is that like to do outreach versus, you could be sitting in an office and have clients come in, or you could go out into an alleyway. And obviously you don't have a problem doing because you've been doing it, but what would you want to tell a person just to kind of want them to know or be prepared for if you're doing that type of outreach?
Just to approach people as a human being and not try and shove any services on them right off the bat. I mean, that's what's worked for me. Like just approaching them, with the conversation. Hey, how's it going? What are you up to? What's going on in your life right now? Anything I can help you with in the moment. And also to just kind of feel the situation out, right? Because we are approaching them in their environment, essentially, while they're actively using drugs or doing drug deals or sleeping. A lot of them had tents in the alleyway, so that's where they're at. That's their kind of home environment, and we are there to offer services, right? If they want them, and sometimes they don't want them. It can be offensive to kind of try and shove services down somebody's throat if they don't want them. Or
Yeah, because I'm sure that they have in their minds a lot of times ideas about how other people are perceiving them. I mean, I've had the good fortune to meet some gentlemen recently that are experiencing homelessness. And we talked about how, when they're out walking around or they're just going into a store or something, how people's, they stare and they kind of mumble to themselves and things like that. So they're already thinking maybe, here you come. Oh, I wonder what she must think of me out here in this alleyway. But it seems like what you're exhibiting is like just meeting them as human to human and making that kind of connection.
Yeah, because I mean, they are,
Mhm.
right? I mean, so many of the unhoused individuals I have met, in the alleys or wherever, like they haven't always been there. They've had families, they have children, they've had jobs where they make more money than I do, and I might ever make. They've had whole other lives. And, the situations that we see them in at these kind of low points, like that's just where they're at right now. That doesn't define them or anybody for that matter. Just having a life situation
Mhm.
doesn't define you as a person.
Right, and that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. So you talked about also working with substance abuse, and the other what with all the letters SUTDD. That's a separate
SUDP.
program. Go ahead.
It's just my credential.
Oh,
So
okay, got it. Okay,
yeah, I'm not fully licensed yet. So you apply for your SUD PT, and then you have the T, so you're a trainee. And then you have that, you could renew it for, I think the maximum is 5 years. And you have to get a certain amount of clinical hours for specific things within that time frame. And then you can apply for the state exam.
got it. And so talk a little bit about other things that you do. I mean, just maybe you could just pick out things from a typical week or a typical day that you have to do in the work that you do.
So, I guess primarily at Wallingford, I mean, I'm not a therapist, right? So I can't do any of that. I'm not a mental health clinician. So as a SED clinician, it's mostly SED assessments, working with the law, whether it's a attorney or a CCO or a probation officer. Case management, if it's what the client needs. I mean, I've got a few people right now where, substance use may not even be brought up that much. It's just kind of whatever they need
Mm-hmm.
At this time. So, yeah.
So you have to be flexible and kind of, I'm sure that no day is ever the same as the previous day.
Yeah.
Well, another thing it would seem to be, you would seem to have to be prepared for is kind of the unexpected. I know I've talked to different clinicians at Sound and different team members, and they say, well, I start off thinking the day's going to go this way, then all of a sudden I get a phone call or somebody comes in or something happens. So is that something you have to be kind of,
Oh, yeah,
you have to be ready for the
for
unexpected?
sure. You never know what's gonna happen with who, right? Uh, Everything can be fine with a certain client, and then the next thing you know, there's a crisis, or they end up in jail, or they end up in the hospital, and or they just completely change their mind, or they end up using, and that could have certain consequences depending on what their situation is. So, yeah.
And we've talked about people of color, a lot of clients who are people of color. And what are some of the issues that, some people might not be aware of, even that people of color that are clients face? And also, what are their perceptions of how society looks at them, based maybe on race? Because right now we're living in a time when racial issues are up front and center, and there's a lot of police interaction, controversy, shootings, all kinds of things are going on. But maybe you could just tell us a little bit about some of the issues that our people of color who are clients are facing and having to deal with.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we kind of just talked about too, like there's a couple of clients I've met with recently, both male, both Black, and I haven't had like the specific conversation with them of like, how do you feel like society views you? But from the comments of, either, for instance, the client that I just met with, he crashed his bike on his way here because he was in a hurry, and somebody threw a racial slur at him. I don't know exactly what it was. He didn't repeat it. It doesn't matter. I don't need to know. It's not okay. And then especially just living in a society where systemic racism and white supremacy is still very much a thing, and the whole prison school to prison pipeline, and all of the factors, right? Like I'm aware that I am part I am part of a system that could potentially, and I'm sure has in the past, damaged people and damaged people of color and Black people, right? I am part of this system. And therefore, I'm sure that sometimes I'm looked at as a figure of authority, right? Which feels strange, but even though I don't necessarily have power, I'm sure, I could have some influence, right? And yeah, I mean, I don't know if that completely.
Well, I think you touched
Question,
on
but
something though, when you said you're a symbol. And I think that what happens sometimes is, I mean, you can look at yourself in one way. I mean, yourself, and you might think that, well, because I think this is how I'm coming off, or this is my place in the world or in my job or whatever, that you're being perceived a certain way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your client or a community member or any number of people, especially if they're different and maybe different background, they might be seeing you something entirely different. And in some cases, that could be cultural, racial, it could be people from another country. I mean, in my work, just in diversity over the years, I worked for city government, and I would run into certain immigrants from certain countries who had they had a lot of distrust of city government. So I'm thinking, hey, come to Bellevue City Hall and we've got this and this and that. And I'm wondering why aren't people answering my emails and why aren't they responding to all these great efforts that we're putting out to engage them? And somebody finally told me, so, well, in their country, if you get a letter from the government or somebody from City Hall contacts you, you're in trouble. That's not a good thing. So I think you raised a good point that it's really important to not necessarily make assumptions, even in interaction. Like if somebody, maybe you're a clinician and you say, why is this person avoiding me, or why aren't they getting back to me? It might not have anything to do with you personally, but you might represent something to them.
Yeah, for sure. And I try to be very clear about what my role is, like as far as what I can and can't do, and just how much power or influence I may have as far as that goes. So I try to be very transparent about, just what exactly my reach is, and include the person in as much as I can, right? Include them in all of these processes. And just continually offer support, right? Because I mean, that's ultimately where I'm coming from. I mean, I wanted this job. I got into this position because I like helping people, right? And sometimes my idea of help, my assumption of what that help might be, could possibly be different from what the person actually needs, right? So it's important to constantly kind of reassess and ask questions. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. What would you tell? I mean, we've heard the term white allies a lot, and do you have any advice for somebody who wants to be a good white ally? Or sometimes we use the word co-conspirator. We've used all kinds of words. Do you have any advice for that white person, well-meaning white person, says, I want to help, I want to make a change, I want to do something? What would you tell them?
I would say listen to people of color, listen to Black people, and lean into any of the discomfort that would come up, within oneself. Just lean into it.
I think that's good advice. I was just thinking as you were saying that growth, self-growth is not always comfortable. And I think as therapists, it's just like people going through therapy. It's not always, I would venture to say is half the time, it's really not a lot of fun per se. I mean, you're getting answers but what I've seen of people that especially are challenged, they're trying to maybe break old habits. They're trying to kind of rediscover themselves. They're trying to break a pattern that they've been in. And that's not always very comfortable, but it's the same, I think, when people are looking inward about their own racial lens, for instance, that they're using.
Right. Because we all have one, even if you were not raised in a family that was racist, right? Even if you were raised in a family that, supports diversity, like, I don't think white people can help it. We can't help it. It is literally built into society in so many subtle and not subtle ways that it's just there. And so it's literally like it's our responsibility to unlearn it. And that's uncomfortable because we're going to look within ourselves and see things that we don't want to see. But the only way to get it out of there is to look at it, process it, open it up, and work on it,
Yeah, that's very well put. Last question is because we do have some people that are interested in this type of career. They might be in college. They might even be just graduating high school. Do you have any words of wisdom for somebody who wants to be a substance abuse counselor or somebody who wants to enter this field?
So that feeling of satisfaction that you get when you've had a really busy day and there's a lot of things that you need to finish. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I busted my butt. I got everything done. I feel like my mind is at peace. You know that feeling? That does not happen in this field, period. It doesn't happen. You're just going to have to totally drop that ideal or that expectation, period, because it's just not going to happen. It's endless. It is endless. I mean, maybe, you know, you can focus on the smaller, more short-term goals of like, okay, you know, I connected this person to mental health or SED services, and now they have, you know, now they have a clinician, or I finished this letter that needs to be sent to a CCO, or I finished my documentation for the last 3 days. Smaller goals, right? But there's always going to be lots and lots and lots and lots. So that was, I think, one of the hardest things that I had to learn, because I really just wanted to get everything done for everybody and just be like, oh yes, like I don't have to, you know, worry about this on Monday or the next day or whatever, because I got it done. But that it doesn't happen, right? It's case management, not case completion. So
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, case management. You never hear of a position as I'm a case completion specialist or whatever.
yeah,
Well, I think you've covered everything. I appreciate you sharing what you do, as well as offering some advice, because we do have part of what we're doing as well as recruitment. So we wanted to start actually in the effort to get more diversity, really, to apply for jobs here. We want to have little videos of actual team members talking about their experiences as well. So this is kind of this
nice.
is filling several different things that I'm trying to do within the program.
Yeah, I would love to see more diversity, you know. When I have clients who are people of color, you know, it's like I wish that I could easily give them the option to meet with somebody that looked like them. If that's, you know, some people don't care. That's fine. That's great. But I know it matters, right? And that's okay. Like the point is that they need to be, you know, they shouldn't be able to be provided whatever provider or clinician it is that they're going to be most comfortable with. And if that means somebody that has their same skin color, so be it. And I definitely don't always feel like I'm in the position to be like, oh yeah, like I know this person, just wait a second, you know? And if there is, right, they're probably going to have to wait a while. That's happened before. Like there's a client that was only comfortable, you know, meeting with another Black person, and there weren't that many options, right? So, which
Yeah,
is
that's
probably
something
a reason there's, yeah, sorry.
I'm hoping that we can have that type of option even. I mean, I know there's we're even working on trying to even just get more of a robust referral system, so that even if an immediate need isn't met, we can say, okay, we couldn't do it today, but in a week you can meet with this person. Because I do think that, I mean, I think certain situations where, depending on what the issue is, I think color or background isn't necessarily a factor. But if it's something that has a racial component to it, or it's something that somehow, you know, that's woven into what's going on with the person, I think that it's just like male female kind of thing. I mean, I think there's certain things that I'm never going to understand that a woman is going through, because I'm not a woman. It's just there's a limit. So in that case, I think that, you know, you have to accommodate, could be gender, you know, a good gender matchup for that particular situation. So something to work
Yes.
on.